I'm Ramon, and several years ago, I worked as a delivery driver for a famous pizza chain here in Mexico. This happened up in the northern part of the country, though I'll omit the specific city. It was evening and starting to get dark when we received an order for delivery to a residential address. My two co-workers declined to take it since the neighborhood was quite far away and known to be dangerous. But I was always the one willing to accept any order, so this time was no exception. I left the restaurant with the pizza headed for that house. The area was indeed rough. As soon as I entered, there wasn't a soul out on the streets. I found the address and rang the doorbell. After a few minutes, a woman around 40 years old answered. She was wearing a robe and looked rather disheveled, with an unsettling demeanor if I'm being honest. The woman was polite but visibly nervous, her voice shaking and acting strangely. I handed her the pizza and she tried telling me something with her eyes. I started feeling tense because the situation was so bizarre. She told me to wait at the door while she went to get the money to pay me. So I waited patiently, but minutes passed and no one came back out. I was growing impatient since it was already quite late to be out in that dangerous part of town. Then I heard the woman's voice again, telling me I could come in to get the money. I responded that I'd prefer to wait for her to bring it, but she insisted, saying, "Please come get it," since her hands were full. Hesitating greatly, I slowly entered and walked down the hallway. The further I went into the house, the worse the stench. An unbearable smell permeated. Clothes were strewn about, cigarette butts and empty beer cans littered the floor. When I made it to the living room, no one was there, but the TV was on, though muted. I saw the money sitting on the dining table and went to retrieve it. But as I turned around, an enormous man twice my size was standing there, blocking the exit. He had an unkempt long beard and looked completely deranged, gripping a hammer in his hand. Seeing him, I felt sheer terror. It took me a few moments to find my voice. Then I said, "I'm the pizza delivery guy. I'll be going now," and tried to leave. But the man laughed and said, "You ain't going nowhere." That's when I noticed the woman crying in the kitchen, mouthing an apology to me. I asked them what was going on. Why couldn't I leave? The man started advancing toward me saying, "Thank my wife, she told you the truth. Now I can't let you walk out of here." I insisted I didn't know what he meant, that the woman hadn't said anything. Just let me go, and I wouldn't tell anyone about this. But he had me cornered. I was trembling, hoping this was just a nightmare. The woman tried telling him again that she hadn't said anything, but he shut her up immediately with vulgar insults, ordering her upstairs. She kept crying and mouthing, "I'm sorry," before leaving. I kept pleading for the man to let me leave. Instead, he shoved me to the floor and tried tying my hands with a long rope. In a momentary lapse of his, I grabbed a beer bottle off the ground and smashed it over his head. He went down, and I ran with every ounce of energy I had, sprinting out of there. I fired up my motorcycle and raced straight back to the pizza place, calling them from the road to tell them what happened and to call the police. When I arrived, a patrol car was already there waiting for me. I relayed the whole terrifying experience and begged them to go to that address, as I was certain the woman was in danger. They sent a unit over there, and what they found was far worse than I could have imagined. It wasn't just one woman in peril. They discovered the remains of 5 women inside. One of them had been there for a while, but the most recent killing happened only 2 days prior. The news exploded, revealing it was a former military man who, aided by his wife, had been kidnapping young women and murdering them when he felt they no longer served their purpose for him. I never could have imagined that thanks to me, a criminal of that magnitude would be exposed. To this day, I'm still grappling with having lived through that nightmare experience. The nausea hits me anytime I recall those events. I quit that job soon after, and it took years of therapy to slowly overcome the trauma. But I'm grateful to have made it out of there alive.